Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and we have breaking news in the NBA world. Shams Charania, just 34 seconds ago, tweeted the Sacramento Kings and GM Monte McNair are mutually parting ways, sources tell ESPN. McNair spent 5 seasons running the Kings, winning an NBA Executive of the Year, of course, when he brought Sacramento back to the playoffs after hiring Mike Brown, making a very heavily scrutinized trade the year prior for Domantas Sabonis, and snapping that 16-year playoff drought that Sacramento and Kings fans endured. However, here we are now as the two sides part ways. In Sacramento, a lot of crazy things have happened, and there have been Kings fans who have been disgruntled after the De'Aaron Fox trade, where the season just did not go to plan. De'Aaron Fox, of course, forced his way out of Sacramento, kind of tied the hands of the Kings. And for a franchise that had so recently undergone a rebuild and went through a long process trying to return to the playoffs, it was tough for this franchise and the front office and ownership to stomach what would be essentially another rebuild, which led to the trade for some draft capital from the San Antonio Spurs and, of course, Zach LaVine. However, I think a lot of the problems fall back to two specific moves that Monte McNair made that changed and altered the direction of this franchise. The first one, the obvious one, I already alluded to it earlier, the trade of Tyrese Haliburton to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis. Remember, no draft picks really in that deal. There were 3 players both ways. Buddy Hield, Tyrese Haliburton, and a few other pieces went from Sacramento to Indiana. Indiana sent back a few pieces, which ultimately did include Domantas Sabonis. The headliners were Sabonis and Haliburton. It was almost a one-for-one swap, with those being the core components of the trade. And of course, now you look at what Indiana's been able to do with Haliburton as they recalibrated their roster, pivoted away from their 4-5 combination of Sabonis and Turner to a more congruent play style that fits together and built with a lot of pace, speed, and high-level playmaking capabilities from Haliburton. You look at what Indiana's been able to accomplish, making a conference finals last year, this year a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, a very, very good team, one that definitely could push in the postseason. Again, it will be tough to beat Cleveland in the second round. That is assuming the Pacers beat the Bucks in the first round, which again will be a tough series. Don't want to underestimate Giannis Antetokounmpo at all, but the Pacers have looked very, very good with Tyrese Haliburton. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And for Sacramento specifically, while yes, they did have that magical run where they were the 3rd seed, ultimately did lose in 7 games to the 6th seed Warriors that year in what was a tremendous series. De'Aaron Fox asking out ultimately pulled the pin on the grenade, so to speak, for this Kings team. And part of what led to that decision was the sign and trade in the offseason for DeMar DeRozan. I just did not love that deal for the Sacramento Kings. And that's the second deal I want to touch on here that ultimately I think has led to the ultimate departure of Monte McNair from the Kings front office. Getting DeMar DeRozan just did not make any sense. Now, the Kevin Huerter trade, I think another one that kind of plays into this, where the Kings did give up a first with protections, which is coming back to bite them here. Possibly they could send pick 13 or pick 14 this year in the draft to the Atlanta Hawks, which would be pretty unfortunate for the Sacramento Kings. There's still a pathway for them to keep that pick, but with Kevin Huerter, when he started to struggle, the Kings could have looked at ways to improve their three-point shooting while Huerter wasn't shooting the ball effectively. Instead, they kind of went the other direction. While DeMar DeRozan did, I think, shoot the ball very well from 3 this year, especially for his standards, he's not the gravity movement shooter that Kevin Huerter was at times during that magical run to the playoffs the Kings had a few years ago. And I think one thing that was really, really missing from Mike Brown's offense while he was still the head coach of the Kings, of course, no longer in that position, but while he was the value of that shooting around Fox, around Sabonis, and Keegan Murray at times flashed that, but wasn't utterly super consistent in that kind of role and wasn't as reliable as you would want him to be. So I think all things considered here for Sacramento specifically, the problems that they've had, everything that has kind of panned out in a bad way for them really falls back to trading Tyrese Haliburton, a trade I did not like. I was very vocal on YouTube about it. I did not love that deal. I stand by that to this day. Obviously, I think most people would agree with me now at this point in time. While I did get a lot of pushback, especially from Kings fans in the moment, Haliburton's just flat out a better player than Domantas Sabonis. Haliburton will make All-NBA this year. Domantas Sabonis likely will not, despite being the double-double leader. Still a very good player. I like Sabonis a lot. He's just not as good as Haliburton. Then you look at the decision to give up a pick for Herter. Just hasn't aged good. Herter's now playing in Chicago. You look at DeMar DeRozan. That addition, I don't think really ultimately moved the needle in terms of winning impact for Sacramento. And all of the opportunity cost is out the door now, having had to trade De'Aaron Fox, given the leverage he and his camp had to ultimately force his way to San Antonio. The Kings find themselves in a really tricky spot. I don't think Monte McNair, despite some of the really smart things he's done along the way, really managed the Kings very well, especially the last couple of years. I think swung and missed on some big decisions, big moves, including the Sabonis and DeRozan acquisitions. And when you make big swings and misses like that, that do ultimately hamstring and limit your franchise's winning potential and ceiling, there are things that come back to bite you. And those are decisions that ultimately do cost you your job. Now, again, Shams here very clearly stating mutually parting ways. I do think that there is some validity to that, but I also do think the Kings were going to be looking to make this change regardless. So while Shams is reporting that, we have to respect what he is ultimately reporting and tweeting here. Again, he's a great reporter, very great at his job. What we do know is the Kings were going to be moving on. The Kings were going to be looking for a different man to run this organization. They already made the coaching change at the beginning of the year when they let Mike Brown go. And now at this point in time, they're looking for someone else to call the shots when it comes to the draft, trades, free agency, this, that, and the other thing. At the very top, the head honcho, the GM of the organization. It's an open position. It's one that, Jeremy Lamb very likely could be in the running for. Just a little bit of a nugget there, a little caveat. I know he's got a very close relationship with the owner. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to Google that. But he's very well connected and in tune there. So watch for that. Definitely something to keep our eyes on. But I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And again, something to point to for McNair. Kings won 40 or more games in 3 straight seasons under McNair's leadership. Before the streak, they had not won 40 games in any season since 05-06. Way, way better under McNair. So that is one of the silver linings here. If you're Monte McNair looking for future jobs in the NBA, this is going to be the top of the resume. You turn the Kings into a competitive team, something no one else had done for over a decade plus. Monte McNair, I do think, is smart. I think he had made a lot of good decisions that brought the Kings out of a really bad place. But ultimately, when it came down to making the right decision at the right time, he did not do that. And now the Kings are going to be looking for a new GM. And I do think Jeremy Lamb is going to be the headliner for that job search. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.